Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Last Word with Naya podcast. So, I am just coming back to you guys after some exploration of my own and just to try and catch up. So, I've been putting out some content. If you're on my TikTok page or my Instagram, make sure you follow me on both those. That's the Last Word with Naya podcast. TLW Naya podcast. Both on TikTok and Instagram. And then like and share and subscribe below. So, now that that's out of the way, I have been going down this rabbit hole of Tartaria and mudfloods and kind of exploring the concept of rediscovering previous architecture, previous buildings, bringing things to the surface and claiming that they were built in a time or by a people that probably didn't do it. So that's kind of what I want to go over today. One of the places I decided to go that I've been hearing a lot about was Kansas City and Union Station. So I went down there on Easter weekend, and pulling into Union Station was amazing. Beautiful building. I'm glad that they were able to, turn it into a mall kind of and attach these other like Science City and the planetarium to it to save this structure. But at the same time, it's one of those places that you kind of have to do something with it. Like, it's massive. Like, I don't know if they really could destroy it or tear it down, demolish it, other than to like probably, blow it up. The building is massive, and I was just in awe of these ceilings, of these doorways, of these pediments, and the symbolism that was all over. But the main thing that I had totally like slipped my mind was the World War I monument, which as I was pulling in, I happened to see this basically giant obelisk, massive pillar on the top of this hill. And I was like, oh my God, I have to go see what this is. So I enjoyed Union Station. That was great. Definitely something that, I don't know if that we could have, like, all of these things that were built in this 1800s period or during the Great Depression when we were supposedly, a depression, the most iconic and mass building projects are happening all over the United States, supposedly at that time. And the Midwest seems to have really been one of these places that, like, is interesting and seems to have been partially preserved and utilized in this way to repopulate things. But in the 1800s, they even talk about this throughout Kansas City and the Midwest and Omaha and Iowa, these massive mud floods that just completely, buried civilizations. And there's so many directions I want to go with this, and it's hard to really think about exactly how I want to word it, but I think that's absolutely possible. The way Graham Hancock and Jimmy Corsetti, Randall Carlson, all these other archaeologists and people that are, theorists on this previous civilization, I think it's plausible that we've been sold this idea of what our reality is and what ancient people were doing, and not even so much ancient people that are right, 1800s, 1700s, the discovery of America, the other civilizations around the planet that were making their way to the Americas, to the islands, around the globe, seafaring during the Ice Age. There's so much that I think we were sold about our planet and our reality, because they know they can get by with it. So I'm on this hunt for answers in all realms. When I say, like my podcast is about everything, I don't have a genre. I'm not just political. I'm not just funny. I'm not just, ancient history, or I'm not putting myself into one category. I have friends that do literally everything, and connections and people I want to connect with, in all realms. So I want to be able to bring that to you guys and never be like forced into a niche. So when I was down there, like I said, I saw Union Station. Amazing, absolutely gorgeous. You can tell it's an old world building. And then I started seeing these pictures of throughout Omaha and Kansas City of these, of these Renaissance or World Fairs, and these buildings. These what they would call temporary buildings, but they're not. They're so big and they're so massive, and these World's Fairs seem to be an interesting thing that I followed that happened all over the world, and definitely all over America, and they just happen to be in these places that have these buildings and these old world, past civilization type of connections. So right next to Union Station, another one of these buildings is what is now the IRS building. Again, Roman and Greek architecture, these pediments with these Greek symbols, massive pillars. And you're like, wow. You can definitely look at these things and look around the city and tell that these do not fit in with anything else. Nothing else really looks like these things. But like my mind, after I saw that obelisk, I was like, I gotta go up there. So I go up these steps, and it's, I underestimated it, and I thought I was doing it good. I should have known better. I worked in podiatry for years, so I knew better. I was wearing flats and walking up. I didn't realize that it was going to be massive, super tiered platforms and stairs. Highly underestimated it. If you haven't been, you should go. It's even just, even if you're just not like a history buff, it's amazing in the architecture realm just to be like, whoa, this is crazy. So went up the stairs and realizing that this is a huge, massive, multi-tiered platform, and realizing like, oh my God, there's incredible banner. There's this huge banner that runs across the front of this. And if you don't know or follow the, the symbolism of, Middle Eastern, Egyptian, Assyrian, Freemasonry, Roman, Greek symbolism that is all over the country in these ancient monuments. And this World War I monument is just massive. So on the front of this banner, it's amazing. And some of the quotes on it they also took me by surprise, because I was like, what an odd choice for, a motif or wording on this. And the whole banner starts out with these 4 horsemen, and in front of them tanks. In the middle of this banner, there's a woman. a goddess, an angel, a star above her, and she's making peace and like bringing justice and peace together. And it starts out with a quote from Revelations, and it's Revelation 6:8. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat upon him was Death, and hell followed with him. Behind these four horsemen that you can intricately see their faces, famine, all of these horsemen, and death, and these soldiers with weapons coming behind these horsemen. I kind of got goosebumps a little bit reading it. I was like, whoa, this is an interesting quote. What it made me think of is how Oppenheimer quoted the Vedic texts when he created, the atom bomb, that I have become death, the destroyer of worlds. That just gives me goosebumps, like knowing that this is a situation, like this monumental thing is occurring, and that's the quote that you come to. So I followed this up these stairs to another platform. These stairs, this whole monument to me is laid out very Middle Eastern. It reminds me of a lot of the sites that I've looked at, that I've seen, others that I know that really go to these places and explore, of these platforms with an obelisk and temples and sphinxes or statues and things like that, giant urns, very much reminiscent of that. It was this huge stair platforms that lead up, remind me of these Persian temple complexes that you see in the Middle East. And I got this amazing shot of this pillar and this staircase, and just knowing the way they plan this is for sure like Freemason planning. And you're just looking at this and you're like, this is an insane shot. It's kind of dystopian, in fact. I call it my Dune shot because it kind of looks like this weird, just stone and mosaic, and then this pillar. And in the corner, I can see this, like, eye in the sky camera. And I walked around these sites, not only Union Station, but this World War I monument, filming. There wasn't very many people there. It was kind of a overcast day, and it was a holiday weekend, so I'm just walking around this, like the outside of this IRS building, camera, getting content, this Union Station World War I monument, and this camera, I'm like, looked right up into, I'm like, oh yeah, they have everything they need. But I've continued up the steps. Like I said, there were these mosaic, very mosque-like windows. They built these temples that sit across from each other. They're temples. They call them museums, but they're very clearly temples. So you come up the stairs, and then you're greeted with this huge platform that overlooks the city, overlooks Union Station, the IRS building, all of this. And then this massive pillar. And at the top are these archangels or these Roman gods, all with crowns on and holding these swords. And And I've seen this in other places. When I was in Chicago, I stayed at a hotel that happened to be right across from the Intercontinental. And I just went to the window to look out and just see the view of Chicago and the streets and the stores. And I looked straight across at the Intercontinental, and in front of me is a Sumerian motif that goes around the building. And you can only see it from like this floor. I think it was 12. I'll have to double check, but and I was like, oh my God. And it's the Anunnaki, it's the winged deities with the pine cones. It's the Sumerian and Anunnaki creation myth going around the Intercontinental building in downtown Chicago. And I'm like, oh my God, why would this be here? And then I started noticing around the top of these windows, the pediments around the top of these windows are all these little knights like this with little swords. And I'm like, wow. And so that's what this reminded me a little bit of, but just massive building scale, huge. And then I immediately also noticed that there were twin sphinxes. And I got excited. I'm like, oh shit, this is so cool. And I walk, because I wasn't expecting this. I walk over to see them, and they're both covering their faces with their wings. And I was just like, whoa. And I looked at the other one, see that one is also covering its face. They face each other, east and west. And they both have a temple, an adjoining temple, with matching urns outside of it, with these Middle Eastern mosque-type mosaic inset windows. And I was just taking this platform in, but these sphinxes covering their faces just blew my mind. And I don't think I've seen that anywhere else. Leave comments, let me know if you know of anything like that or you've seen this before, but I don't think I've seen it anywhere else. So I was blown. So I jumped into this rabbit hole on these sphinxes and found out that their names are Future and Memory. And the reason they're covering their eyes is they are shielding their eyes. So Future, or Memory, we'll start with Memory. Memory is shielding its eyes from the horrors of war and the horrors of the past. Okay? And then Memory is shielding its eyes from any unknown futures. I just found that to be really interesting. And I don't understand the concept, I guess. I get it, but I don't get it. Because a sphinx's whole thing is to protect. If it's, they say that they're guarding, So if you're guarding, why would you want your guardians to be blind to not only the past, but the future? So that just made me kind of like, it was confusing. Beautiful monument, massive building, again, at a time when I don't think we really had the resources to be doing this, but still just massive, incredible building and beautiful, beautiful. So looking more into these mud floods and things upon that level, these mud floods came through the entire Midwest, like Kansas City, parts of Iowa, Omaha, Lincoln, Arkansas. So I started looking at things in Omaha because being that I live in Iowa and in the Midwest, these areas are easy to get to and they really are super overlooked. And I even lived in Sioux City for a short period of time in my youth, and I had no idea about most of these things. So Sioux City, Iowa has the oldest national monument in the United States. Did you guys know that? I would have never expected that. And it is it's an Egyptian obelisk, in fact. It's an Egyptian obelisk in the middle of Iowa. And I never saw this when I lived in Sioux City. Sorry, as I'm doing this, I'm trying to make sure that I have my content correct. Yeah, there we go. Sorry. Okay, guys. Yeah, it's the Sergeant Floyd Monument. It's the oldest national monument in the world. Or, sorry, not in the world, in the United States. And it's at Floyd's Bluff, which I drove past this on a regular basis when I lived in Sioux City. And I can't believe that I never went and saw this. And there's other monuments. This Sergeant Floyd traveled with Lewis and Clark. I just want to make sure you guys know that. And they had other monuments to them or that they had done, and none of them look like this. None of them are of this quality. None of them are, it's 100 feet. Huge. Like, what? So I thought that was very interesting. And I started going down these rabbit holes of what this mud flood or this weird situation going on with Omaha and Kansas City and things like that. So evidently there was this whole process of what they consider regrading projects throughout Kansas City and Omaha due to this mud flood, that they were supposedly trying to get rid of the hills. They were trying to get rid of the hills. And I just wanted to make sure that this is all right. So Omaha especially had these weird mud floods, and they had this regrading project that they supposedly did that I thought was really interesting, and these pictures are really intriguing to look at. But one of the things in Omaha that is a huge telling of these mud floods is the Church of St. Mary Magdalene. And this church, supposedly the story is that they built this church in reverse order. Are you following me? In the 1800s. That supposedly they built this church in the 1800s in the middle of the Midwest, Omaha, from the top down, and then finished the bottom later. Which, when I really dug into this, and even ChatGPT was like, that's virtually impossible. So it's really weird. And all of these old world buildings that they have there all have these very distinctive, very tall, castle towers on them. And I just thought it was very interesting. If you guys look this up, the pictures are wild of a whole story of a building, basically, deep or more, and buildings sitting on top of them. Or these machines that they're using to pull the dirt out to uncover these buildings, uncover these train tracks, trolley tracks. Really, really weird. And I've seen photos like that also when these pictures of them building the subways in New York and Buffalo, and it almost looks more as if they're digging these things out, that they're removing the dirt. They're digging these things out, they're rediscovering them versus building it. Because the stuff looks super old already. I don't know. All I know is there's some super, super weird symbolism, these super weird buildings, these corn palaces they used to build all over the Midwest, these world fairs. And like I said in a previous episode, that Des Moines actually means the city of the monks. That still just sticks with me, because that means, to me, I think of that as monks protect knowledge, kind of, right? Like, they're there because they are protecting their religion, their knowledge, whatever it is, in this holy place. And I think maybe the Midwest was a good refuge for a lot of things, being that it wasn't very coastal. But, you know, maybe this mud flood was obviously unexpected through a lot of areas. And Kansas City as well, they said they went through this regrading project to get rid of these hills. It doesn't make any sense. There are hills everywhere. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around these things and really get a grasp on a lot of it. And I haven't been to Omaha in years. Like, usually it's just a drive through. But I think I'm going to have to, like, just go check it out one of these days and look at St. Mary Magdalene and go look at this obelisk in Sioux City, because these are things that are really actually super close by in the meantime that I could get some great content on and really kind of do some more work myself and be on the ground, because that's really what I want to do and really be able to experience things firsthand. It's great having people that I can talk to and have been there and done things. But, you know, nothing beats firsthand experience on these things. And these sphinxes, oh yeah, I just remember, these sphinxes are actually Assyrian. That's even more weird to me. I was like, what are these Assyrian sphinxes doing in the middle of the Midwest, Kansas City? But the whole trip was amazing. It was really awesome to see both, you know, well, multiple buildings that were very interesting and on my list, and really even then, like, give me more to go off of based on what I've seen so far. And so I really love that, and I'm glad I was able to bring some of this to you guys. I'm definitely going to try and have on more content about these places that I've been. I know I'm going to Phoenix here in a month or so. I'm going to try and check out some spots there. So, like Montezuma's Castle, I've always wanted to go see that and just really take a look at some of these Native American sites that don't get a lot of the same attention. So, everybody thinks that you need to leave the United States to find real, like, ancient architecture or civilizations, but it's really all around us. And especially in the Midwest, like, the Native Americans that were here were building these massive mounds that you can see from satellites. And Serpent Mound and the Bear Mounds in Iowa. There's really so much that I think that they've just hidden from us and just omitted. Learning about these mounds and learning about when these settlers were honestly coming over here and finding out that there were actually, like, these Native American, you know, cities, basically. These massive mound complexes, stone complexes, similar to the Aztecs, similar to the Mayans. I think we just really forget that we've been everywhere. We're everywhere, and people have been doing this a lot longer than they want you to believe, and they're a lot more sophisticated than they want you to think. They want you to think that, to me, that never makes sense, that they want you to believe that they had minimal sophistication or they were just, you know, hunter and gatherers. Then why is this building like this? What is this pyramid doing here? What is this massive Göbekli Tepe type temple complex doing here? Stonehenge, what is this doing here if they were just hunter and gatherers? Clearly that doesn't match up. And if you say these things, archaeologists freak out and they try and destroy people. And we don't have to all think the same. And if just asking the question and asking to really take other things into consideration causes that sort of like visceral reaction, then I think you have some inner work to do of why that's happening. Because if you can't even answer the question and be like, you know what, actually, I don't know. I didn't think of it that way. I'm not sure. Let's dig on that. Then you're doing yourself and everybody else a disservice as what you would consider a professional or somebody that you think would be qualified to speak on any of this. But, you know, I did just watch the recent Douglas Murray and Dave Smith on Joe Rogan, and as Douglas Murray would say, you know, have you even been there? Have you even been there? Do you really get to speak about anything if you haven't been there and touched the dirt? And, you know, yes, people are allowed to have questions. It doesn't matter if it's about war, if it's about questionable decisions countries are making, genocides, economics, politics, anything. People are allowed to have questions and question authority and question the narrative. Because how are we growing and learning? I keep saying this. I was talking to my daughter the other day about this concept as well of people that they say are crazy sometimes, you know. I'm sure they thought Isaac Newton was a psychopath. The guy was needling his own eye, like putting a needle into his own eye to try and determine where light was coming from, where the light was coming from. That was before he figured out gravity. Oh, I'm sure they thought the Wright brothers were insane. These two guys out there running around with these makeshift objects. Could you imagine being the Wright brothers trying to explain a plane to people back then? They definitely thought you were insane. They were definitely like, what? You're like, yeah, so actually, you know, like a bird, right? The birds. So we're going to do that, but like we steer it, you know, you sit inside the bird. And it's made out of metal or wood, and it goes through the air. Like it's got a motor. And they're like, what? How do you get down? Oh, yeah, so then you got to guide it down. It's got wheels, two little legs that you land. They sounded crazy. And watching them out there every day probably looked insane. And now we go to space, supposedly. If you ask Katy Perry, she went to space. We went to space. Women in space. They set the mark. As if there hasn't been women in space before them. And, you know, that was the stratosphere, if that. So, I just, like, there's so much that we don't know, that now that the internet exists, there's no reason not to do the work. And it's easier now than ever to find things out, whether it's pertaining to the government or pharmaceuticals, like the food you're eating, the vaccines they're giving you, tariffs, all of these things. You can do the work yourself. It's not hard. We all have one of these in our hands. So it's not, and we all have a computer, you know, like we know we can find the information. So there's no excuse to me to just be like, well, you know, I don't know. Like, but you should. Some people, I think, like the concept of the NPC, those are real people. They're not real people, but we know those are real things, right? Like the NPC is a real thing. They just go through the motions and they're there as background. You know, it's like a video game. They're there as background to facilitate for the main characters, basically. So I think those are probably the same people that don't dream in color, right? And don't have like that inner voice. People that are like, oh yeah, I don't have a... I think like that, and that they don't have like an inner monologue. Those are NPCs. Because what? Somebody needs to watch this person. You got him on a list? I know you guys are listening. Watch them. Like, if you don't have an inner monologue, I have questions. Because what? You don't have an inner voice? You don't dream in color? Whoa. But I think that going down these trips and these paths to finding more answers is going to be super exciting. Not only for me, but hopefully for you guys. And I have some great content that I'm about to bring you, and some guests that I'm really excited to work with and chat with and ask questions of. So I'm going to wrap this one up. This is another episode of the Last Word with Naya podcast. Like, share, subscribe.